What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the E4 Explicit Podcast. I'm Corey, and today I talked to lawyer John Phillips, who is representing Joe Exotic. This one is crazy. We talk about Tiger King, the first season. We talk about Tiger King, the second season, which highlights John Phillips and his story with Don Lewis, who's Carol Baskin's ex-husband, with their family and him trying to figure that out. He had a brilliant way of communicating and putting out that story to everyone to shed more light on it. But we really dive deep into season 2 of Tiger King, so stick around for this one. Don't forget to hit that like button and please subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell notification so you get notified every time that I put new shit out, which is every week. So get notified. Enjoy this episode of the E4 Explicit Podcast with John Phillips, the lawyer for Joe Exotic. Peace out. This episode of the E4 Explicit Podcast is brought to you by Bravo Concealment. Bravo Concealment is known for some of the best high quality and concealable holsters on the market. Located in the great state of Texas, they offer free shipping and unlimited lifetime warranty on all of their products, and a 30-day money-back guarantee if you don't like the product. I've been using Bravo Concealment for my gun holsters ever since I got into guns, and the quality is by far, bar none, the top notch in the entire industry that I've seen. And right now they're doing a buy one, get one free, plus free shipping, the 30-day money-back guarantee, and a lifetime warranty. On top of that, you, my friends, will get 10% off of any product, of any purchase on their website by using Explicit 10. Use the code Explicit10 and you'll get 10% off your entire purchase from bravoconcealment.com. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the E4 Explicit Podcast. I'm Corey, and today we have John Phillips, who some of you may know from Tiger King Season 2. He is a lawyer who is now representing the good old boy, Joe Exotic. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But John, one, thanks for coming on. And two, if you could kind of give a little synopsis of who you are, that would be great.
Yeah, my pleasure. So before a lot of the world came to know me as Joe Exotic's lawyer and the guy on Tiger King 2 that some are, I guess it's okay to be compared to Better Call Saul. I like Better Call Saul. But I spent 20 years litigating against the president of the United States and, on high profile cases without cameras. And so it's a little much, but yeah, I've been practicing for 20 years, the last 10 in my own firm. Licensed in 8 states, started with Alabama, then moved to Florida. And then, every time we got a high profile case, we went ahead and got a license in their state. And so now I've got 8 law licenses and the last 9 months or so, I've represented Joe Exotic, and became his lead attorney. And it's interesting personally, it's interesting professionally. Even on Thanksgiving, before we went to dinner, my family was sitting around a hotel. We were in Seattle and visiting a friend, and Joe called, and my kids wished him happy Thanksgiving, and he was eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or just finished eating his Thanksgiving peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And so my kid said, happy Thanksgiving, Uncle Joe. And that's the new normal.
Oh my God, that's fucking crazy. Dude, Joe, yeah, that's a crazy story. So your family's like, I mean, I'm sure they're used to like your career, obviously, like you said, with high profile cases, but this is, I wouldn't even say, I guess it's kind of high profile, but when I think of high profile, I'm thinking of like Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, like those right. Kind of high profile. This is a different situation. No,
it is very different. And it's, it's only high profile because we all, we were all affected by the pandemic, right? Right. Nobody knew who Joe was during the first, large portion of this. 3 years Tiger King filmed, and they had different names for the documentary and different ideas about what it would be. And then they stumbled across Joe and this Joe Exotic Carol Baskin rivalry, and what should we do with exotic animals? How should they be treated? What's PETA's role? And, just kind of like my family, everybody was talking about on social media back in March of 2020. And my wife and I put the kids to bed and started watching it, and then, watched another episode and another episode and another episode. And I remember tweeting, and I haven't deleted it, it's still on there, but I remember tweeting, every one of these idiots could have avoided some of these problems if they had just lawyered up to begin with. And I've said that to Joe. I saw him last week. I said it to him, like, if the old ounce of prevention, kind of thing. If y'all had competent legal counsel before you got involved with all this, this never would have happened. I mean, Joe ultimately agreed to $1 million judgment, thinking he could bankrupt out of it, and that's led to a series of issues and setups and failures, and it's happened to every single one of the people in the tiger trade that were connected. And it's unfortunate because it's funny, we kind of like watching the circus or the wreck as you drive by, but these are real people's lives. And one thing that appeals to me, and I think it's why I do decent at what I do, is I try to see the best out of anybody. Look, there's this world, this particular Tiger King world has some of the best con men and hustlers, and con women, frankly, and hustlerettes as the world can have.
Right.
But some of them are parents, and there's a means to the end here that they were all trying to get to with and compete. Now, when you're setting somebody up fraudulently for a murder for hire scheme or trying to take their property away, there are lines that were crossed. But at some point, my job wasn't to just continue to hate on somebody on social media or real life. It was to find out what the truth was. And so that's where kind of life intersected with Tiger King too.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of, I'm on the same page when it comes to when I was watching it. I mean, it couldn't have happened in a better time as far as the pandemic. I mean, no one had anything else to do. I actually talked to what was his name? Anyway, his dad, he wrote a book about his dad potentially being the Zodiac. And his documentary on Fox came out literally like right before Tiger King. They would have cleaned up all the awards and stuff if Tiger King didn't come out. But me and him were talking about this, and we were talking about the amount of, you can't make this shit up sayings that I said while I was watching that series, especially season 1. It was like each episode I was like, this has got to be fucking not real. And it was. And what kills me, man, is like I know that filmmakers at Netflix have a duty, and they want to, get as many eyeballs on it as possible. But they spend, I mean, this one was, I think, like 4 episodes, season 2. They spent so many hours talking about Don Lewis, talking about you, talking about Ripper, talking about all this stuff. And they spent like 5 minutes at the end of episode 4 talking about the cats. And it's like, I don't know, to me personally, like I love animals. It's kind of like, damn, man, these people are like Jeff Lowe, who's the guy that they centered around in Joe's friend, not friend, but the guy, the crazy fucking guy that like was the feds pulled up to his house and they like took all of his animals, and he went like
Tim Stark.
Yeah. Like those guys, man, like, I don't know, like put all those animals in that back, in that truck, in that box truck in the back of his fields to try to hide them. I don't know, man. It's hard for me to have sympathy, even though I know they're people, to these types of people that just, even Carol Baskins, honestly, like she's like you're referring to women, even her, like what's the difference between her and Joe Exotic? You know what I mean? Like she has a rescue.
Right. And you got to go back to all of them have these interesting histories with the law. And so there's the Don Lewis stuff that I can't comment much on because I also still represent Ann McQueen, who was Don's assistant, and we've got a lawsuit against Carol. They left that narrative out.
Yeah.
But there's, when Carol took over Wildlife on Easy Street, so that was Don Lewis's park.
That's what it was called. Yep.
Right. They had an Airbnb where they allowed, these cats to spend, overnight with people. And so she was into cub petting, not just cub petting, cub sleeping.
Wow.
And so there's videos of it. There's photos of Howard Baskin at cub petting things. And everybody in this world, again, the Tiger King world, has major hypocrisy that surrounds them. And it was all about kind of the gain, and or the battle with the adverse side, right? At some point, when we know from 2014, years before all this happened, that Howard Baskin and the lead federal agent, Agent Bryant, were emailing each other, hey, we got to infiltrate Doc Annals, we got to infiltrate Joe Exotic's park and find something on them. We got to get rid of these guys. And Antle, you really couldn't do because he kept it close knit. He kept family in there, which is going to be the next 3 episodes about kind of his dysfunction. And then Joe was easier to infiltrate because, he was trying to staff with people that also needed rescue. That's the way he puts it. And it just led to this series, the first 8 episodes in 2020, and then the 5 in 2021, and 3 more coming next week.
Oh, wow.
It's been this crazy thing. And I've, even one of the producers asked one of the other producers, like, why is John meeting all these people? Why is he spending time with Doc Annal? Because I'm an attorney.
Right.
It ain't, it's not about fandom. It's about trying to understand the cat world, because before all of this, back 2020, early 2021, I didn't really think about it. It never, at some point in the kind of exploration of this case, you got to make decisions about cub petting. People make decisions every day about whether they want to be a vegan or a vegetarian or a, pescatarian. I've always eaten meat, like I've always, I like veal. I don't order it. Right. There's some stigma around certain things. I'm probably wearing a leather belt. I'm wearing a leather belt and leather shoes right now.
Right.
And so it's, we're all making these moral decisions, and then you get thrown into this roller coaster of what's going on in the exotic animal industry, and you're addressing, different moral decisions that you never thought you'd have to think about or weigh.
Right.
Certainly, if you've got to produce enough cubs to keep cub petting enterprises going, you have to think about the long range effect of that and what it's doing to the adult tigers once they age out.
Right. Yeah. Especially those. Tigers. You're talking about a species that is like limited in the wild. Period. So it's kind of, I think, isn't there like more captive tigers than there are wild tigers or something like that? So
I think that's right.
And it's just like, I don't know, like Doc Antle, he's another one. I reached out to him and he hit me back, and he was one that kind of also turned my stomach a little bit, just because like these people are making and people have been making money off of exotic animals and animals forever.
Right.
So it's nothing new. It's just really blown up now because of the documentary, and it's kind of like this underbelly of things. And it's kind of like my thing with Carol Baskin. I hit her up as well. She told me she'll do this in January. We'll see after all this shit comes out.
Right.
But like with her too, it's like she's trying to go the congressional way. She's trying to I feel like it's almost trying to make it look like, oh, but what we're doing is okay. And just because the type of person that Joe Exotic is, off the cuff, like crazy. You've seen the documentary. It's hard to kind of like defend him in certain ways, as easy as it would be to defend her, because,
but it's, we're seeing, and again, I've seen these people's lives. Like I spent 2 hours with Joe last Friday in a federal prison. And it's, we're seeing the snowflakes on the tip of the iceberg as told by a documentary.
Right.
I've got literal hard drives. I don't think this is going to mess up. I've got literal hard drives and cell phones from, Alan Glover and James Garrettson and Joe and Jeff Lowe and all of them. And so I get to see some of the unfiltered moments. And, there's some sweet moments. I think they all get into it for the right reasons. Mm. And then it's a battle of economics and what happens with anything in life that you have too much of. It's True. Anything in abundance is going to cause you problems, whether it's, people gaining weight or people, drinking too much or drugs or whatever it is. And when you have, over 100 wild animals trying to save tigers, you get upside down. And so and then you have this competing interest of what we saw with the federal government and various, PETA type organizations who had a ruthless, by any means necessary, rivalry. And look, Joe's in prison. Eric Cowie's died from the overconsumption of alcohol. This guy, Jeff Johnson, who was one of Agent Bryant's lead witnesses, shot himself in the head in front of his wife. Another lady died, Brenda Varga. Joe's parents have both died. Like, we've had a substantial amount of death and dismay since Tiger King. That's real. They don't get to come back.
Right.
And there's real lives at stake here, both of the humankind and the animal kind. But how ironic is it that the lead story is animals shouldn't be in small cages, and the punishment is, guess what? Let's put people in small cages.
Right. Federal
and
prison.
malnourish them. And so it's okay. That's fine, PETA. We've taken care of, your lead target for mistreatment of exotic animals. But what about the most exotic animal of all, the human race? And it's, there's bigger questions that people need to contemplate.
Right. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. If you and like you said, you kind of know them on a more personal level. I'm a filmmaker. I totally get a magic of editing, how it can make someone look like a saint and someone look like a piece of shit. And I think, the documentary, I don't know them, any of these people personally, so I don't know how they really are. So I can't speak on that. But let's talk a little bit about kind of, how did you get involved in all this? You said you and your wife were watching it and just probably in amazement, like, what the hell is this? How did you, because you were representing Don Lewis's family for a moment. And I want to touch on, if I can, just the documentary part of that.
Yeah.
That was, I'll give you kudos in a minute about the way you handled the media. I thought it was brilliant, actually. But how did you get involved with all this shit, man?
Yeah, so, we go from March of 2020 watching the darn thing to me literally sitting, right here where I am, answering the phone. And it was Don Lewis's granddaughter's fiance, a guy named Dustin. And Dustin called, left a message with my office and said, hey, my fiance's grandfather went missing. His name's Don Lewis. And I was like, I know who that is.
Sounds familiar.
I saw the show.
Yeah.
And I'm like, somebody just make sure that's not a prank call. Cause every once in a while we'll get some weird ones that come through, but we get high profile cases. We have cases against Steve-O and YNW Melly, and I've represented Terrell Owens, and like we have, Omarosa versus Trump. We have high profile litigation, and so the next thing I know, I'm talking to Dustin, and he tells this compelling story that really was only just tiny bit of Tiger King 1.
Right.
And I meet with the family over the phone. Actually talk to Ripper over the phone. And they drive from Tampa to Jacksonville. We have a meeting in our conference room, and all 3 daughters and the legal assistant executive assistant agree to retain me. And so, off we went. And at that point in time, and some of this, look, I don't know why they started my introduction with "let's make a deal." It was a little weird, but I get it. In documentary filmmaking, kind of
gotta be entertaining.
Yeah. And so, and I'm proud. Look, I dressed up like Alexander Hamilton to give an okey doke to Wayne Brady, who was Aaron Burr in the Chicago cast of Hamilton. It was kind of let's see if he chooses, Alexander Hamilton to talk about himself,
Right.
I'm sure he did.
Right.
And so, off we went. And much said about the media, but at the time that I was hired, I was retained to do a press conference, retained to do Dateline, retained to do 48 hours, and manage the media aspect, and then had this bright idea to do this commercial does anybody know what happened to Don Lewis? And it was just a commercial that was supposed to run in Tampa and Jacksonville. And the next thing we know, National stopped it from airing where it was supposed to air, reviewed it, and then we're told circulated in more markets, and then got it over to GMA. And, the next thing I know, we're talked about on Howard Stern and everything. And so the family had a billboard that was, I still don't know who funded the reward, but the family had the billboard. And my whole thing was, if you're going to have a billboard and you're going to put up this news campaign, you want the billboard covered on the news, well, let's make it national, not local. And so, next thing we know, it's super national. And the family was a Shire family. We did a couple interviews. Most of the stuff was just resounding the commercial. And I did an interview with Tiger King, and they asked me, had I ever done a criminal background check on Ripper? And I said, no, he was hired before me. And I'll leave it at that. There's more to the story that Tiger King left out. And, there were some tense conversations and who's doing what and for what and who's getting credit. And, I got an email from the lead daughter, and she fired me and hasn't spoken to me since she fired me. And Ann McQueen, Don's assistant, kept me, and we filed a lawsuit and for defamation, and it proceeded with that. And, kind of like I say in the show, Joe saw our commercial and, kind of liked the moxie, sent me an email, and, you got to basically get requested to be on a prisoner's list. Mm-hmm. And so I emailed him back, and we emailed about 100, 200 times between like January and February. I went a couple weeks before March. I think he announced me March 1st as being retained. And, the first few months, it was kind of the hurricane of dealing with Joe and Team Tiger and all the mess coming off the pardon, which I never really liked.
Yeah, that was crazy.
You got to exhaust legal remedies, but Trump's going to Trump, you never know. And then, by May, June, July, we were making some progress with witnesses. August, September, October, Tiger King's, filming a lot. And we're getting these affidavits. And then, we were just kind of waiting for Tiger King to get out of our lives, so to speak, so that we could finish off the work that we were doing, off camera. And, right at the end there, the last scene that we filmed was that scene. I've got the wire actually right up there where we find, the wire. And one piece they left out was the wire was actually found by the trailer that Alan said it would be. He said trailer one, and trailer one was, depends on what year, was where trailer one was.
Right. So talking about the razor wire.
Two trailer ones.
Yeah.
But, there it was, the exact length, color, and description he described. And, there was no other wire by that fence. There was two lengths right by, where we found. And
I have a bunch of holsters from Bravo, and one of them is the inside the waistband holster. So this goes inside the waistband if you want to conceal carry. Also, swap it out here, outside the waistband. So this outside the waistband is actually like hella thin, and you can see kind of like how close to the body it can get. You could take this on the range. You can probably conceal this and comfortably do it with, a hoodie over top or whatever. If you want to open carry, it's up to you. They also send out mag pouches, right? So you can throw in an extra mag. You're going to the range. You don't have to unload and reload every single time. You got a little hollow point moment. They come in handy if you're on the range, like I said, or if you're concealed carry and you're one of those people that are got to have a lot of mags or whatever. Whatever your cup of tea is. They also send you these really cool pamphlets. They go into great details in these brochures of how to wear things properly, safety mechanisms, and all the features that all of these holsters have as well. So they really focus on educating their customers, which when it comes to guns, safety and education are number one. They don't have any left-handed holsters except for the Glock 19. I'm a lefty, but the right-handed holsters are so dope and they're so comfortable and concealable that I don't really give a shit. Just learn how to shoot with my right hand. And right now they're doing a buy one, get one free plus free shipping, the 30-day money-back guarantee, and a lifetime warranty. On top of that, you, my friends, will get 10% off of any product, of any purchase on their website by using Explicit 10. Use the code Explicit10 and you'll get 10% off your entire purchase from bravoconcealment.com.
You know, here's the guy who said he committed perjury and, you know, had a plot to kill Joe. And, you know, we've since corroborated that with other people. And, you know, that's a big deal. And the point that I point out, you know, spoiler alert, by the way, the point that I point out in the show is a significant one that, you know, it's not just that they plan to kill Joe. It's the fact that I kind of do this on the show that they use the exact same strategy. You know, Alan Glover's strategy to kill Carol, as he testified, was to chop her head off as she rode her bike down the path. Mm-hmm. Alan's strategy is to kill Joe was to chop his head off as he rode his four-wheeler down his path. Mm-hmm. So
it's not a coincidence. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. And so, you know, off we've gone. We've got a resentencing coming up in January. And then we've got some dispositive motions to try to either overturn his conviction or get a new trial.
Wow. And now would that be a jury trial?
Yeah, if he has another trial, it technically would be a jury trial. You know, we don't know how they can retry it. If you know, you got Eric Cowie, who was one of their lead witnesses, has passed away. Mm-hmm. James Garrettson, Alan Glover, Jeff Lowe, Lauren Lowe, John Rinke have all testified now on behalf of Joe. Mm-hmm. There's your
no
witness
case.
list that have essentially flipped in some respect.
Right.
And so I invite the trial. I'll do that one. Let's schedule a time in March or April. I'll go try that thing right now.
Right.
You know, because we've got a substantial, I mean, we've gotten hundreds of recorded phone calls, hundreds. It was hard to get through them all.
Right.
And, you know, none of that was produced prior to our involvement. And so it's, you know, the things you hear an FBI agent talk through with confidential informants and people they're working with, you know, is pretty disturbing because it's, again, the main thing to people to realize is the federal government was there before the murder for hire happened. You know, they had this meeting at this restaurant in Ardmore, Oklahoma, between Agent Brian and James Garrettson. And James just wanted to talk about the animal stuff, and Bryant wanted to talk about murder for hire because this person that was on the park, they talk about it briefly, Ashley Webster, mm-hmm. You know, had supposedly gotten a death threat, or had been told to go actually be the hit woman by Jeff, Lauren, and Joe as she tells the story. And she was on the park 4 days and then kicked off. And so she called Carol.
Right. And to warn her, I think is what they said on the.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so off we go. But there's so much more to the story. You know, Alan Glover has testified that he and Ashley Webster had a personal relationship, a very personal relationship while they were at the park. So again, are we talking about coincidences? Why are the hit woman and the hit man, you know, having a personal relationship?
Right.
That's odd.
Yeah.
And, you know, Jeff brought that up to the federal agent, Jeff Lowe, and Jeff Lowe said, don't talk about this in writing. And so there's just so many little things that never saw the light of day. You know, we only saw 8 to 12 hours of Tiger King, mm-hmm. of thousands of hours of reality. Right. Well, here we only saw 5 days of court, you know, 7 days of court of thousands of hours of reality. And the whole thing was to get Joe put away. And they did. it worked because nobody knew who he was. Nobody cared. And that, you had public defenders who just kind of, and, now we're looking back at it and get to pick through it. And fortunately, the criminal justice system does allow us to do that.
That's crazy, man. That is, I wanted to go back to the Don Lewis thing with with the way that you handled the media thing. I thought, didn't you, whose decision was that to air that commercial during Dancing with the Stars that Carol Baskin was on?
Yeah. We don't do commercials very often as a law firm. Like once every 3 years, we'll put on like a PR spot. We made some hand sanitizer, back when COVID started, and did like a community ad PSA about hand sanitizer.
Right.
So one of our ad reps locally reached out to us and said, "Hey, do you want to do a commercial during Dancing with the Stars?" Like, but logical. I was like, "No, I don't want to do really a commercial. That's a good idea." And so I talked to my team about a PSA kind of thing and talked to the family. And I mean, from concept to turn, and in the film industry, how quick. Like we didn't even have time to hire anybody. We took our 4K Handycam. That's why it's kind of grainy.
Yeah.
And ran down to do it. We only had one lav mic. Like it was assistants misspelled in one of the versions. Like it was so quickly turned, because we had like 24 hours to shoot and produce the thing, but we didn't think anybody would really see it.
Right. You didn't think
that
was going to blow up.
Market.
Yeah. And
so we subbed the commercial a couple of times. Like I got assistant spelled right by the time it went on YouTube. But it was just kind of a few $1,000s to produce and air in the Tampa market to give a boost to the hotline number. And, it was supposed to be in the first block, the first regional ad in the first block in both the Jacksonville and Tampa markets. And I was sitting there with my phone, watching, and nope. And second block, nope. Third block, nope. Now I'm texting come on.
What's going on?
Guys, I paid this money. And they said, well, National has it and they're looking at it. I'm like, well, shit, what do we do? And closer to when it was time for Carol, they pop it on, and it immediately, I mean, I think it's got over 1 million watches on YouTube.
It does.
But it immediately went crazy, and TMZ picked it up. And I've always been a Howard Stern guy, and to hear one of my friends text me, said Howard Stern's airing your commercial right now. And look, you set up a billboard, you set up a hotline. I'll argue until I'm blue in the face. You want people to see that.
Of course.
And so again, it was kind of used against me, but the contrary, where I didn't get to defend myself, and I'm going to take the high road. I do want them to find out what happened to Don, but Tiger King cameras were filming, all of us at every moment around that time. They were in the most private of meetings that you could imagine. Mm-hmm. Was it really about cameras? It's Ripper, to his credit, has made a name for himself with his YouTube show. He's still doing his thing, and has a cameo out of it. Well, good. I hope he makes money. But it was never really about necessarily too many cameras, or it bothered me. But on the same token, there was a falling out between me and the Tiger King producers around that same time, because we couldn't control the edit. And at some point, I think if the family's honest to themselves, they can't like what happened to Don Lewis and Tiger King too.
With the psychic and shit.
The psychic and shit, and the underage girlfriend in Costa Rica. And if that's my dad, I might would rather that all stay out,
Yeah.
just keep it internal. And so, you can control sound bites on Dateline.
Mm-hmm.
You can control sound bites on 48 hours and even podcasts like this. Like, look, I know it's all fair game because we're rolling,
Right.
but I control what I say.
Exactly. If you say something, that's on you.
When when you have cameras following you around in your day-to-day life, telling you to act normal and putting guys like the psychic in your path, things are going to happen.
Right.
And we knew they were going down to Costa Rica, and we knew at the time what that meant.
Right.
And there was a substantial section left out of Tiger King 2 where the family and the producers go to the Dozier School for Boys, a former Florida reform prison where boys were abused and sexually abused. And they told part of Don's story there to kind of give it context to why he was in the way he was.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was left out. And
right.
So, it to this day, if they talk about Tiger King 3, I'm not sure if we're going to do it. Like it's what's in Joe's best interest, what's in my best interest. I'm asked to do press conferences and press
all the time,
daily.
Yeah.
And I haven't done I don't think I've done a single press conference in Joe's case yet.
Right.
There's just the press will be done when I carry him out on my shoulders from federal prison.
Right. Yeah. What? Yeah. No. And it's funny because they kind of portrayed you in that way, and it's funny you say it's Better Call Saul because in the documentary they portrayed you as like in the beginning you were like this like knight in shining armor, and then by the time the episodes were over they were running you kind of being like, oh, like this like person in a dunce hat in a corner. Like yeah. That's how I viewed it. And they were kind of like making it seem like you were, only care, like the family was talking about like, oh, you only cared about the media and stuff like that. And like I was saying earlier, is I thought that was the best way to get, the word out. I mean, look what Netflix has done with just the Tiger King season 1. So it would only make sense to kind of go that route to get as many eyeballs as possible on the story. I don't know.
That was where the rubber met the road, in that there have been people, including people within Team Tiger, Joe's own team, the people you saw episode 1, season 2, that signed exclusivity deals with Tiger King. It always bugged the crap out of me that Joe's private investigator guy, Eric Love, had an exclusive deal with Tiger King.
With Netflix.
Yeah, with Netflix. And so we're the production company, Eric Good Productions. And so it's like, well, how can you just listen to them when we have no editorial control? How is that in the best interest of the client?
Right.
I get the other side where you're best friends with TMZ and have Harvey on speed dial. That's gross too.
Right.
But you can't have, to run a case, you can't have all your eggs in any one basket. Again, it goes back to this thing I said about moderation. You gotta use media in moderation.
True.
This case, Joe's case is a little different when it comes to a media strategy, because there is no jury trial yet. What we're doing to some extent is almost an anti-defamation campaign, showing that what was said about him, whether Tiger King won or in trial or by PETA's release or Carol Baskin, is either untrue or part of a larger false narrative.
Right.
And, that's the issue. But Carol's been hounding Joe for 10 years, following him with a PR agent, because of his mall shows. And so you just got to consider the source with all of this. They all had a lot at stake.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the hypocrisy that always drove me crazy, because how could somebody have an Airbnb, with bobcats or servals or whatever it was, where you literally have people stay overnight with large cats, and then take such a moral high ground.
Right.
She's bought cats before. She tells her story that's where she
has
started.
to. She's had to. Yeah, exactly.
Was
Yeah.
buying these cats.
Her diary.
Yeah. And so it's just, look, let's, kind of like I said in my press conference, it was a longer press conference, but look, let's try to get the story straight. And if we have to, that quote, let's, we got one shot and then we'll sue. That's a paraphrase of Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln said, first we ought to try to encourage our clients to compromise. And if the compromise doesn't work, if mediation isn't a appropriate strategy, then let's litigate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I basically took Abraham Lincoln and Better Call Saul and
put it together,
soundbited it together in the middle of a 10-minute speech.
Right.
But, I get it. It's fair game. I was in another documentary called The Armor of Light about Jordan Davis, this young man killed over loud music. And in that one, they did kind of the same thing. I had this, YouTube video or Facebook video where I talk about, a disc injury, and all the doctors will describe the disc in the human spine as like a donut, very hard on the ridges and soft material. And if the donut material oozes out, then you have a bulging or herniated disc.
Right.
And so I explained disc materials on this just stupid video. And then I eat the donut, and here I'm watching Armor of Light, this Abby Disney production, and they got me eating a donut.
And they got the clip on there.
I get it. I get that's part of the character buildup or parody of documentary. And I understand that. I had to tell people, look, please don't stop at episode 2. Please watch 4 and 5, because you're going to see me make a hitman cry and, do some good investigative work.
Right.
Consider my entire body of work on Tiger King, please.
Right. No, I agree with you. And I think also that's the other thing I wanted to ask about is so much like the credibility, right? We talked earlier about the case that, if the government or whoever is prosecuting Joe, if they wanted to do a retrial, it's like all of the people that went against Joe are now, you have affidavits that basically they're countering what they said initially. But in the beginning anyways, I feel like a competent lawyer, if Joe had it at that time, would have been able to pick those people apart anyways, because they're not really legit. Not that they're not legit, but they're just not credible witnesses. I mean, and then now that they flipped, how do you think that's going to work? Aside from them, obviously not, they all in the documentary, they're like, Joe shouldn't be in jail. Like how did you get all of them to sign affidavits and flip? And B, do you think that's going to help you because of the type of people that they've been portrayed to be,
Yeah. Again, I can't say that I personally like everybody that I've met, but I get them. I see their kind of master plan.
Right.
Some of them were motivated by the fact that Joe, wasn't the greatest to all the animals in the animal kingdom that he encountered. But ultimately every single one of them seemed to have a change of heart about, okay, but did he truly commit murder to hire?
Right.
No, he didn't. And so it started, I had reached out to Jeff Lowe originally when I represented the family, because we were trying to figure out, so Joe was Carol Baskin's number one nemesis. Part of the reason that he got treated the way he did is because he was a loudmouth as it relates to Carol Baskin and Don Lewis. The I Saw a Tiger video where, a replica Carol Baskin is feeding, meat to a tiger.
Yep.
Purportedly Don Lewis. It is just sensational craziness. Imagine if that were you'd be like, I got to get rid of this guy. Like, this is not doing me well.
Right.
And so, 20 years of that, 10 years of that. And so, Jeff and I had spoken about me just kind of coming and checking out the park and seeing if I could find any boxes related to Joe. And he invited me there. And then, as Jeff Lowe's prone to do, took to Facebook the next day to brag that the family of Don Lewis was, coming to need his help. I was like, brah, like, no, I really do try to operate, under the radar unless we have a mission to serve. And so I was like, I can't do this, Jeff. Like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And he basically told me to go F myself, that he's going to, run his social media as he likes. I was like, fine, go ahead. And so, Jeff was, at some point realized, the enemy of the enemy is my ally.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, James, Jeff, not really Alan, but Rinky, Lauren Lowe, even some of the people whose names that haven't been in Tiger King realized that all of them were being persecuted. If you go back to Joe's trial, you see evidence linking to everybody being propositioned to either be on team government or team Joe.
Mm-hmm.
And, even somebody like John Finley, who was Joe's ex-husband, the FBI approached and said, look, we've got bestiality videos. Shit. Are you kidding me? And so he's like, look, we're either going to prosecute you for bestiality or you're going to be on team. You got to be on team government.
Right.
But look, if we're protecting animals, for fuck's sake, then don't give somebody clemency or leniency if they're doing that.
Yeah. Hit them with that too. If you're going to, yeah.
It was, other types of animal sales, other types of animal abuse, other types of, gun possession, all these crimes that the government was like, look, we'll make all this go away. But we got to get Joe. And at some point they got Joe, and then, the Vegas authorities come for Jeff, and
mm-hmm.
the federal government, sues Jeff. And, James is constantly dealing with, Carol's backlash or the USDA's backlash, or, the federal government's backlash. And so they finally realized, to some extent, that if nothing else, I'm trying to understand why the imbalance of power exists at the level that it exists. And it keeps coming back to, these GFAS sanctuaries. This guy named Dan Ash, who now runs the American Zoological Association, who used to be a U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And, this core group of people that have politically aligned for the Big Cat Safety Act and to see roadside zoos abolished. But meanwhile, where do you think the zoos, the public zoos, the zoos that are like in our city, where do they get their animals?
Right.
Do we care? Or do we, it's at some point, again, if we're going to ask the tough questions, and it leads all the way back up to how we're treating our people,
mm-hmm.
Let's not just be moral in isolation. Let's not be hypocrites.
Right. I agree with you. I think like the zoos and stuff like that, if you're going to do it to one group of people that for the most part don't really have like the means, got like feeding them the Walmart meat to the tigers and stuff like that. Like a zoo at least would have like the means to give better care, but at the same time, it's literally the same concept. I mean, the zoo, and I'm from DC, and the Smithsonian, it's all the museums, the zoo, everything's free. But don't get it twisted. Those Smithsonian makes money. Right. So it's like, the zoo's free. You can take a jog in it. You can see some tigers, but it's still fucked up. Like, period.
Long-term lease on pandas. We have to lease our pandas in this country.
Yeah.
And so we're shipping them all the way to the United States on these long-term leases.
Yeah.
But yet under the Endangered Species Act, we can't barter or sell for. Where's the line?
Yeah, it's very
Jack
gray.
Hanna, when I grew up watching David Letterman and Jay Leno, Jack Hanna taught me more about animals probably than anybody else. And you saw the majestic nature of them.
Yep.
And now Jack Hanna went from hero to zero because this is a species of cub petting.
Right.
And, you're not supposed to do this. And, so, it's like this, it's where cancel culture and the Endangered Species Act and all of that meet. And I don't get me wrong, I agree. There's problems with it. If anything in abundance is a problem.
Right.
And if 6-month-old tigers are being put down, one side, the Tim Stark element would say, well, that's a property right. The PETA side would say, absolutely not. That's just unnecessary mistreatment of animals.
Mm-hmm.
I see both sides of it, but somewhere in the middle is true. They are property. It's how we treat, my God, how we treat, dogs, how we treat homeless,
right?
How we treat our homeless,
right.
Man, our veteran homeless.
Yeah.
And so it's just, we just get these isolated tangents that I get. We can't do everything all at once, but good grief, man.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that too, man. Steve Irwin, it was Steve Irwin for me. I know Hannah and them, but yeah, Irwin, he's conservation and all that stuff. And it's like, what are you gonna? I mean, he's dead, but like, you're gonna every good thing that they've done, are you gonna take away all that too? It's a very gray area, especially when you got animals, man. You're pulling on people's heartstrings and feelings and stuff like that. It's definitely a slippery slope.
I took a picture with a koala bear in like 2004. I grew up watching Steve Irwin and Crocodile Dundee, and the whole thing. Couldn't wait for this dream trip to Australia. And you better damn believe, as soon as they throw a koala bear in my arms, I snapped a picture and fed a kangaroo.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the money I paid to do that did go to help.
Exactly.
Hope, the protection of the species. And so there's again, Joe's far from perfect. Joe's far from, fully innocent, but there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of his show on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
There's minutes and minutes and minutes of him, threatening Carol.
Right.
Usually when he needed a rating surge.
Right.
He shouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
He's a bonehead.
But does that mean he did what they said?
Does that mean that this was all a murder for hire plot? I mean, she says it half the time that she's constantly getting death threats, and she posted one the other day on her TikTok about somebody that painted, Carol's a con or something.
Right.
And how she gets death threats. Then that's, then it's not just Joe.
Right.
Maybe it's just your attitude to some extent, maybe it's because you're, sometimes your righteous indignation might offend other people.
Right.
Moderation, again.
Yeah. Comes down to moderation. No, I don't know what the fucking thing is. I think obviously Netflix helped out with the magnifying what happened with Joe and Carol for sure. I'm gonna a couple more questions and I'll let you get out of here. I know you're busy as fuck. So first of all, you mentioned earlier that you had high profile cases. I did not know that. I thought you were a personal injury lawyer, and I was curious because I'm like, how the fuck does a personal injury lawyer get to be able to represent on a federal case? I don't know how any of that works. I'm genuinely asking.
Well, the original case, again, was a wrongful death case. That's what I'm known for, is civil wrongful death. I've got a $495 million jury verdict in Florida for a teenager that was shot. And Jordan Davis was kind of my first high profile case, which happened right after Trayvon, which was a young black kid pulled up at the Gate gas station locally and was shot and killed over an argument that started with loud music. Mm-hmm. And Michael Dunn, the killer, now sits in prison for the rest of his life. And he left the scene, never called cops, and just, said, stand your ground after the fact.
This is in Florida. So yeah.
In Florida. Exactly. And
right.
So, we had Howard Schneider, who was a serial pediatric dental abuser, just ripped kids' teeth out, would strap them down and rip their teeth out for Medicaid fraud. A series of civil cases. And, Joe called, and my first warning was, hey, bud, like, I'm a storyteller. And at the end of the day, trial lawyers are storytellers. That's what we're trained to do.
You have to be.
And, getting the affidavits getting the narrative right is a part of any story. Now, we have a team of very high end criminal defense lawyers and criminal appellate lawyers that are assisting us with the heavy lifting when it comes to that side. But it's like Shaquille O'Neal, trying to shoot a free throw. There's some things that you're just not going to get me to do. But when it comes to, slamming a ball home, getting an affidavit, I got it. The storytelling, the marketing, that stuff I can do. And it's, I wasn't a high-end commercial litigation lawyer, but when Omarosa was being sued by Trump's campaign over NDA, Omarosa was, we met on a set of a TV show, and she lives here in Jacksonville, Florida now. And she hired me, and we beat Trump, and he's got to pay my attorney's fees now.
Right.
And so, it hasn't been your traditional career for sure. I do a lot of car wrecks. I don't, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I enjoy going to trial with somebody catastrophically injured and helping them find justice and tell their story. But there's something about, 97% of my cases you'll never hear about. They're not going to make the news. We're just over here working. If I tilt, you'll just see the files that I have on the floor that nobody's going to ever, know their name. Mm-hmm. That every time I do one of these, I move it from my desk over here, and then I'll move it back and get to work. Mm-hmm. But it's, there's just something about Joe. I did a TED talk, and I talk about how me as a white guy from Mobile, Alabama, was always in a bubble and never really encountered race, right? It was just never something that I gave two thoughts about, because I was privileged and didn't see, racist stuff, didn't see non-racist stuff, just kind of floated along as a kid. And then my bubble was kind of popped by the family and realized, oh, it's all around me. There's systemic racism, what's going on in courts, what's going on in society, what's going on with economic deprivation. And, Lucy, Jordan's mom, is now U.S. Congresswoman Lucy McBath, went all the way from, her son's death to being a U.S. Congresswoman. Oh. Ron is running around the country, trying to make the world a better place. And they both held my hand and kind of taught me what my naive about me was. And there's a TED talk about it. And, to Joe's credit, he's kind of doing that with me in the criminal justice system. What we're doing to our inmates, how we're keeping them deprived from adequate counsel and from communication. Right. Me trying to communicate with Joe privately is one of the hardest things, because there's recorded calls, there's recorded emails, there's recorded mail. We have some limited exceptions if we jump the right hoops. But even Friday, he has legal mail for me. He can't just give it to me. And because he brought it into the room where we were meeting, one of the guards said that they get to look at it. And so I'm like, well, all right, I guess, like, what's the rule? I need a judge right here, right now to decide. But, why do you get to look at our private communications and violate privilege when we've always been separated by a partition? There was not even a chance for me to hand him anything.
Right.
And so it's just, there's so much disadvantage. And, kind of like I was naive about race, I was naive about the criminal justice system, just if somebody's in jail, they must have done something wrong.
Right.
Well, no, not always. And it's why I'm passionate about Joe's case. And he's a good guy. Again, my kids have never seen Tiger King. They've seen little clips that will show them. But it's obviously not 10-year-old friendly.
Yeah, no.
But they're there at home when I get calls sometimes, and it's Uncle Joe, and they're going to have a a little gift from Santa Claus of something that we have. Like we got lots of little bobbleheads and action figures and stuff around that people send us.
Right.
It's my new normal. It's weird, but it's Joe. At the end of the day, we've got hours and hours of work every day on Joe's case and other cases, and if we're not getting the work done, we're going to get fired just like anybody else.
Right. That's true. Two more questions. I'll let you get here. One is, has Joe's tune changed since he's been kind of like full circle? He's had tigers in cages, and now he's in a cage himself. From what I've seen in press conferences and documentaries and stuff, it seems like he has kind of realized, like, damn, that was wrong. I don't want to do that anymore. Has he kind of changed his tune when it comes to that kind of stuff?
He gets it. At the end of, I think at the episode 5 of Tiger King 2, season 2, he says that, he's spent so much time in the solitary holding unit, for sometimes petty little violations that they're throwing him in for 60 days at a time into isolation, into solitary confinement. And it's so bad on mental health generally, but for somebody gregarious who loves people, it's torture. And so, Joe is seeing what it's like to be in small cages. And, that's fine. People can say karma or whatever, but at some point, if you're really out for, the humane treatment of animals, we got to focus on people too, and what's going on in the criminal justice system.
Right. Yeah. Good point. Yeah. I'm glad he's I saw that in the episode, and I was like, I'm glad he's at least acknowledging it. And because if he can have a voice to kind of, I think he's got a good platform now to where he can kind of say some good things and kind of, turn his image around too. But as far as he goes, is because I know we talked about this in email, but there was a report that came out that he has aggressive cancer, and they moved him from, I don't know where he was, what state he was in, but moved him to North Carolina, I believe it was. Do you have any update on that? Is it really aggressive, or how is he doing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm limited ability to talk too much about it. I can release what he's released, and it's essentially an aggressive stage 2, potentially higher, treatable cancer. Now, again, the limited options of treatment in the federal prison system are not ideal. You can't get proton therapy. No. You're stuck with old school radiation. To get radiation, he needs to spend 40 something days, preferably consecutive, under in the tube getting radiation. But he also needs to spend time in Oklahoma for his sentencing within the next 2 months. And so, Joe's got this terrible razor's edge choice of justice and health that's unfair for any human to have to make.
Right.
And thankfully, we're moving, there's this cryptocurrency called the T-King coin. And when they set it up, Joe got 1% of all holdings. And so, or it's saved for him in a wallet. And so it is earmarked for his health, and it's earmarked for his prison fund. And so, from that, he's been able to hire experts. We've been able to get some medical consultants, and, but for that, like every inmate doesn't have that ability to
exactly. Not everyone's right? Joe Exotic.
So it's crazy, the deprivation that they can put inmates under. And, fortunately there's these unique systems and this great group of administrators that have helped with that. But, it's no fun, man. It's
I can't imagine.
He was upset today, talking about the guards looking through his legal mail. Like, that's supposed to be covered by the Bill of Rights, but they get so much immunity, and it's unfortunate.
Right. That's crazy. Well, hey, thank you for updating me. I was curious of what happened with that and everything. I hope he's, all right. And he can, I'm curious to see if you're going to get this, hopefully, new sentencing and new trial and stuff like that, man.
I think it's, the question is, to us, the question is when. We've seen
Right.
So much. Y'all don't, the public doesn't know. We've actually filed a lot of it in a sealed motion with the court. And so it's going to come out, as these things progress through the court system, because that's what's most important. The judge needs to take a look at it and make hard decisions. He was there for the first time, while the federal government was kind of running up the score because,
right.
It was a series of, it was an NFL team versus a high school team or a JV team.
Yeah.
And, now Joe's called in, an all pro team.
Right.
And we're going to see what the score is next time.
Yeah. I'm curious, man. Well, where can people find you and stuff like that? And if you want to shout out anything, like, as far as updates.
Yeah. Social media, I'm either John Phillips ESQ, which I think is like Instagram, TikTok, Twitter is at John Phillips. We try to post, Joe updates. Joe is usually at Joe #exotic. We still got to get him verified for some reason. He's having a hard time getting verified. Social media, man. And, it's Joe's book is out. Here's another plug. You can buy Joe's book, give it for a Christmas gift. Whether gag or real, it's a good read. I read it on the plane to visit Joe this last week. But it's keeping things in mind. Again, if nothing else, take away, let's figure out life in moderation, and kind of give people the benefit of the doubt and realize there's two sides to every story, and we probably need to hear more facts before we decide it.
Sure, yeah, I agree. Don't base everything off of what you see on a couple hours of a documentary. So, hey, John, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, man.
My pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks, man. That's another episode for the E4 Explicit podcast. We'll see you next time. And right now they're doing a buy one, get one free plus free shipping, the 30-day money-back guarantee, and a lifetime warranty. On top of that, you, my friends, will get 10% off of any product, of any purchase on their website by using Explicit 10. Use the code Explicit 10 and you'll get 10% off your entire purchase from BravoConcealment.com.